All right, we're looking at Azure the Enchanter deck. Let's go see the deck list. All right, they want a lot of enchantment creatures and a mix of 3 to 4 group hug and 3 to 4 stacks for if someone pops off, but the main theme is definitely enchantment creatures, preferably with cool effects. So looking at the deck list, the first thing I see is that we have a really low amount of mana rocks. And it seems like we have a lot of creatures that are above the threshold for Zur the Enchanter. So let's sort by mana value and see how much of the deck can be cast. So all of these creatures will not be able to be fetched by Zur the Enchanter. Now, I don't think that's the worst if they're strong creatures, but outside of that, we should be a little picky. I also noticed some of these have bestow. And what's kind of important is that with Zur the Enchanter, we can't attach it with bestow. So bestow cards are a little less attractive here. Hypnotic Siren is a 1/1 with 1 if we pull it out with Zur the Enchanter. Now, granted, we're not going to want to do that, so it's not the worst, but it is good to know. So let's see, let's take a look at what these ones are and see which ones can be pulled out. So I feel that most of the bestow creatures in this section are going to be your weaker creatures. Like Thassa's Emissary, it's just a 4 mana 3/3 that draws a card versus something like pulling Ghostly Prison or Rhystic Study out of your deck. It's not going to have the same strength. Celestial Archon, Doomwake Giant. Okay. Perplexing Chimera is a great card. Archetypes. The archetypes are going to be a little weaker here, mainly because Zero already has flying, but removing flying from your opponents is good because you're going to need to get him in. But beyond that, finality I don't feel is as strong because whether Zur has Death Touch or not, people are going to block him because they need to get him off the field. All right. So I also noticed that you have some very strong cards. Especially you've got Enlightened Tutor, Psych Rift, Toxic Deluge, Merciless Eviction. I think these are very, very strong cards. Mystic Remora, Standstill, Suppression Field. So there's a lot of strength here, and it does feel like you're quite using that strength to make up for some of the weakness of the enchantment creatures, which is a good direction to go. Looking here, Brain Maggot is pretty strong, even though it only targets one opponent. The fact that you can pull it out of your deck. Spirited Companion as well. Once again, being able to pull it out of your deck and being low mana is really attractive. Um, all right, so let's talk about changes. Actually, I'm going to take a quick peek at your lands. I don't think you would have a bad time if you put in a few more duels. The Scry Temples aren't great, but they are there and you can use them. So I would maybe put the set in to see how that feels. You have a lot of basics, and you have a 3-color commander, and you have mainly white pips at the start. So if you're going to keep this many basics, I think going up on plains and going down on islands is definitely acceptable because at a glance, most of your deck is white and black with a touch of blue. Coming here, straight up, I think you should play whichever Signet, Azorius Signet, whatever Signet you can play, Azorius Signet, Felwar Stone, which I can't spell. You should play that as well. You already have the Arcane Signet. Any 2 mana Mana Rock, I think, would go pretty well here. I'd like to see the Mana Rocks go up to at least 10. Um, you have a lot of really strong cards here in your four drops, and Zur is a four drop. When our commander is at 4 mana, we want to be able to play him turn 3. So we want to be able to drop a turn 2 or a turn 1 mana rock with Soul Ring, but generally a turn 2 mana rock, and turn 3 we play Zur. Zur is a bit of a lightning bolt, a lightning rod for removals, so having him out early, it guarantees that first attack. And I know you were looking for putting in more enchantment creatures, but I am going to suggest one or two enchantments that I think are going to be particularly strong here. Um, Nice and easy ones would be any kind of black draw, Necroponents. Let me pull that up. Necroponents or Phyrexian Arena. Both of these are very strong. I would suggest going in those directions to start drawing more cards to see more of your deck. Rhystic Study obviously is also very strong, but you want some redundancy. Underworld Dreams, History of Benalia, these are weaker cards for sure. Gravestorm should be Necropotence for the same casting cost. I would also recommend cards like Rest in Peace are really good. These are the kind of stacks cards that you want because with this, you're going to be able to shut down a lot of strategies very easily. And you're not going to, because it's strong enough to wipe graveyards and not aggravate the other opponents, it won't force, it's not going to get a bunch of hate onto you that you're not going to get anyways. Um, those would be the main directions I would go into starting here. Increasing mana, increasing enchantments. After that, I'm going to look at a few cards that I feel like we could take out. Rite of Replication is not where you want to be. I don't think you have very, very good targets. Immediately, my mind goes to you want a right to replicate. Where is he? Spirited Companion. And that's not that great. I think you're better off just cutting this, maybe for another board clear. Merciless Eviction and Toxic Deluge are good. I'm pretty sure there is a a board wipe that hits non-enchantment creatures. Destroy, yeah. Extinguish Hope is probably the one you're going to want to add in. It's pretty cheap. It's pretty good. That'll that'll be the board clear. It will kill Zur, so maybe it's not great, but all board clears will kill Zur anyways. So having a board clear that dodges the majority of your deck is incredibly strong. And I think, yes, you do have Grim Guardian. That's definitely something you want. Then one other direction I would think of putting cards in, I just thought of now, would be like Mass Reanimation. It doesn't have to be straight up Rise of the Dark Realms, but something along those lines. I would suggest actually Living Death. Hold on, with the art I like. Um, like Living Death, it's $5, but it will wipe the board and bring all your enchantment creatures back. Your deck is very reliant on having these enchantment creatures, so having a way to recur them is particularly strong. I do really like Eidolon of the Rhetoric here. If you wanted, it seems to be against what you're going for, but there are a lot of good white hate bear creatures that fit into a shell like this. Draneth Magistrate would be one of them. Man, it's gone up in price, but it is very, very good in white. A few hate bears that are attached to creatures aren't bad. But I can see that your best strategy would be to curve out, grab your signets on turn 2, cast Zur turn 3, just start attacking with Zur, and while you're pulling cards out of your deck, I would suggest I would suggest leaning towards the gods, getting Erebros out, getting either of the Helioids out, any gods, Athreos especially. All of the gods that are not creatures when they're on the field will be pushing forward your board state without being vulnerable to board clears. I'm going to quickly look if there's anything else I think you should cut. Um, I get that Standstill is a very, it's a good card and people really like what it does, but you don't have a lot of instant speed cards to kind of back it up. One of the strengths of Standstill is that if someone triggers it, after which after which it resolves, you can still have instant spells to play on the other player's turns. But here you don't really have this, and outside of Zur, you really need to cast your cards. So taking a few turns off on a standstill while your opponents probably just benefit from it is I don't think it's where you want to be. Similarly, Ardent Plea Ardent Plea doesn't get triggered. The Cascade doesn't get triggered when you put it into play by Zur. So most likely you're going to cast this and probably get one of your weaker creatures. So I would take that out too. As Foretold is a very cool card, but it's very strong with 0 mana spells or suspend spells, and you also don't have a lot of those. So those would be the things that I would take out. Monastery Speech is okay. I think you generally will have stronger targets if you just go a little wider and generally just go into black. As said before, grabbing Phyrexian Arena and cards like that will be your best bet. Otherwise, I think this the deck has a very clear direction it's going in. I like that. You definitely have a lot of strength in your non-enchantment creature spells. So I think maybe you should just take, be a little more strict with yourself about which enchantment creatures you're going to play. It's going to reduce your numbers, but I think that's okay. Going down a few creatures opens up more enchantments. And then finally, if you want to round out the deck, I don't think it would hurt to pick up a few counter spells. I actually would probably go into removal first. Once again, you're kind of low on blue, and I don't think you should necessarily change that. When you have a three-color deck, sometimes having one color be a little less necessary than the other two is not a bad idea. Cutting Rite of Replication, for example, if you were going to cut Caliphate and go down Standstill, as foretold, you're cutting and Monastery Siege, you're cutting a lot of the blue from your deck, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It lets you be more confident in your mana base and what colors you're going to have. Something like Fenax, Archetype of Imagination, those are fine. They're much lower, like higher in the curve, so you'll have the blue mana for that, and it won't be too much of a problem. All right, this was Cursed, so I hope this helps.